Hey, what's up, everybody? Chris Fluke here, Chris Fluke Podcast, episode number 51. Today, we're talking about making a career in the game of fitness. Past couple weeks, man, my daughter just started preschool. She's 3 years old. Last week was awesome. I got a bunch of work done. She's in school 3 days a week. I'm like, this is great. Got my podcast recorded on a Thursday. Was thinking, boy, I like this new routine. I'm going to start writing a blog. Maybe I'll get 2 in a month. So instead of preparing for the podcast this week, I started writing a blog. Next thing you know, I'm way behind on the podcast stuff. Now it's Sunday, and I'm hammering this thing together here right now as my daughter and Marisa are inside doing their thing. So basically what we're going with here is we're talking about fitness, and we're talking about how to start a career, how to make a career of this thing. And I had to talk last week with a man. He's 30 years old, and he's looking to make a change in his life. He's a father. He just moved back up into the area, and he's like, hey, man, I want to get into the game. What do I need to do? And, after we started talking for about an hour, I realized, man, maybe this could be a podcast episode, and I could kind of point to this if anybody else has some questions down the line, and, they can maybe listen to that, and then from there kind of formulate a plan themselves. But basically, it just goes like this. You don't necessarily need a certification to be a great trainer, right? But you need a certification. I don't know if that makes sense. You could go and work as a fitness trainer, right? But the idea behind getting an examination, setting that date, and then creating a plan for you to study and learn. Studying and learning is the key here. A piece of paper saying you're certified doesn't necessarily mean too much, but that whole preparation part, if you take an exam and you schedule a tough exam, one that's very hard, not this basic weekend one, not an overnight thing, not, hey, I'm going to go to a CrossFit seminar, get my weekend certification, open up a gym on Monday. That doesn't really mean that you know much of anything. What I suggest to anybody, set a certification date for a very tough and challenging one. Just Google the hardest ones. Back in the day, I did ACSM. There's NASM, there's NSCA. Right now, I'm with the NSCA, National Strength and Conditioning Association, Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist, right? But then there's different levels here, right? You could be a personal trainer through the NSCA and stuff like that. Anyhow, you set the examination date, and then you put into place a plan to get yourself ready. For me, with the CSCS, that Strength and Conditioning Specialist, it took me 9 or 10 months just to get prepared. I needed to have a college degree. That was number one. All right, I got that. Next thing now, I need a good 9 or 10 months to just kind of prepare for that. That's the type of work that I think is going to pay off for you in the long run, where you got to hit the books hard. You got to take the practice exams. You got to go do an exam prep course. Things like that, if you really want to learn. If you just want to slip a paper, go online and get your online thing. If you want to learn and grow and expand your knowledge and your base and your skill set, challenge yourself with a new certification, all right? So that's number 1 and 2, I guess. Set the certification date and then start preparing for it, right? Number 3, like I said before, you don't necessarily need to wait to get that certification, then start helping to help people out. Like the guy I spoke with last week, he's going to start helping a friend out. He's going to start helping his parents out. He might start working with his little daughter. You're going to start getting experience, and you're going to start figuring out ways. You're going to start to understand how the body works, right? You're going to see that maybe some 9-year-olds can't do this or that, or maybe some can and some can't. Maybe that 13-year-old girl has that wobbly knee when she's doing a split squat. You're going to see that stuff. You're going to see that the elderly might have trouble getting up and down off the ground. Maybe you could practice and drill that a little bit. Or you could see, like in the case that we're going to break down here today, that former high school athlete or college athlete that's been out of the game for over a decade, how do we get him back training at a level? He's probably gained 75, 80 pounds since he was in competition. How do we get that? How do we get this guy back in the game? So what we're looking at here now, to sum things up, if you want to be a fitness trainer, and this is my little spiel, set the date, set a plan to prepare yourself for that date. From there, start talking to people, start working with people, start figuring out what are some of the common problems that we're seeing kind of in our society, that we might see in youth sports, that we might see in athlete training in general. Start talking to people and start working with people. You can't replicate experience, and you're going to need it. You don't have to wait for that certification date necessarily to help a family member out, to help a friend out, stuff like that, all right? From there, you want to get as much experience as possible. Once you get that certification, take a job at 2 or 3 gyms. You might have to work like I started back in the day, it was LA Fitness, and my schedule book at the time, it was open, man. It was just available pretty much 100% of the day when I could be. And then they just filled in my schedule with people. Sometimes I had long breaks in the schedule, but I was like, I'm trying to make a living here and I'm trying to get some experience. So you just make yourself as available as possible, right? You could get a job there. Eventually I progressed to working at another, private facility at the same time I was doing this. So there's always these continuums, and there's always different levels to things. You start at one spot, then you try to continue to progress. You read, you listen to people, you listen to podcasts, you try to absorb as much knowledge as possible, so that you could learn from other people's mistakes, and you could also build off of what they've done previously, right? You could build off their successes and you could learn from their mistakes. You almost want to let everybody else make the mistakes, you learn from it, and then you come in there and start applying that to what you're doing, all right? So we got that, right? We're getting experience, we're getting as many jobs as possible, we're being as available as possible. We're trying to help out as large of a population as possible. Don't carve out your niche in the first year. Start working with people, period. That's it. I mean, when I first started, whatever I thought I was going to be doing is totally different now. My niche just kind of became just trying to get people to achieve a higher level of fitness so that they could apply it in their everyday life, whether it's in athletics or just, being able to walk up and down the stairs and not get out of breath, or be able to carry their kid around and not have a sore back, sore bicep, tendonitis in an elbow. Just trying to get people to work at a higher level. Trying to nudge them to be better each week is kind of where I'm at right now with everybody that I work with. Whether or not you're 10, 20, 50, or 60, doesn't matter. We're just trying to nudge you to be a little bit better each and every day. So, as I got this question from this same man, he's like, hey man, I'm first guy, my buddy, my old wrestling teammate from high school, he hasn't worked out in ages, he's out of shape, he's overweight. So I'm thinking to myself, this is where the conversation became an hour-long talk here, and I'm like, maybe I record this, maybe we turn this into something. So if I'm working with somebody now, and I'm a trainer, all right, I just did all the groundwork that needed to be done. I got myself prepared. I got myself a certification. I'm ready to go out there and get a job. And you're going to get a large variety of people, but let's just say we're trying to get some people, for this example for today and what this man wanted. He's like, I really believe that those big compound lifts are important. So we're going to talk about the bench press, a squat, a deadlift, and a military press, which is an overhead press, right? In his mind, he's like, those 4 foundational lifts, I want them to be a part of everybody I work with. So I said, okay, instead of really trying to critique what he was doing, I was hoping to kind of give him a good plan of action or a good place to start. We're trying to get somebody to achieve these levels, all right? To being able to do those 4 lifts with good form and with an efficient movement pattern where they're going to prevent injury and prevent soreness and all this other stuff, right? So what do we have to do? This guy that he was working with, his old buddy from high school, he's got a foundation. He grew up wrestling, He's probably worked down the past. It's just been a decade. So what do we have to do? We got to kind of knock the rust off, and we need to focus on a few things. My opinion, for everybody here, I think we need to focus on being able to do movements pain-free, right? So you could call it mobility, you could call it flexibility, you could call it, who knows, whatever. Like, there's so many names for this stuff. But basically what it comes down to is, can I get myself in a good position to perform the lift, all right? With mobility, we want to be able to go full range of motion. We want to be able to do this stuff pain-free, A lot of times, you remember, you go through the airport and they get you in that hands-up position. All right, do you ever see people try to do that for when they scan you? I mean, there's a lot of people that can't even get their arms up into that position. Those type of people shouldn't be pressing weight overhead or doing pull-ups and stuff like that. They don't have the mobility component to it. You got to keep this in mind. Not everybody's going to be the super mobile person that could just jump right in and get after it. We need to kind of have some, like I said about there being continuums with what we do. In the job market there, but there's also continuums with the way that we train and how we progress things. So we need to start, and we need to be able to do things the full range of motion, pain-free, and we don't want to reinforce poor movement patterns by putting strength on top of it. So what do I mean? If I can't get my arms in this overhead position with my biceps kind of right by my ears here, if I'm pressing out in front of me when it's supposed to be a military press, if I start lifting more weight each and every week in that, I'm just kind of reinforcing that poor movement pattern, and I'm just putting strength on top of that, and I'm getting more of that motor, the motor pattern stuff going, that's just going to be how I press moving forward. I need to call a timeout. I need to press pause. I need to correct that mobility stuff here. And like I talked about in previous episodes, guys, this is a... it's just because your shoulders are tight doesn't mean that's the site, right? You could ice a sore shoulder, but really that might not correct the fact that maybe it's my scapula is not moving right, my thoracic spine and stuff like that. So we got to keep the big picture in mind as we put a mobility program together here. which is what we'll get to here. And I have previous episodes here when I broke down that new functional training for sport a couple episodes ago. We talked about ways to do this here, so I won't repeat myself for the sake of that. But we need to have the total body in mind as we start breaking down mobility stuff. Like I said, pain-free. Don't put strength on top of dysfunction. Another thing we're going to see here with people that haven't been working out is kind of this, they're going to be in a deconditioned state. So not only do we need to work on mobility, we need to work on their work capacity. And what is work capacity? Work capacity is your ability to do work over a period of time and then be able to repeat that over and over again. So if you look at track and field, for example, somebody that is 20 years old and they run track in college, they could run 400 meters, which is one lap, right? They could run one lap, and because they're trained, they could rest for a bit of time, then they could repeat that same effort. So let's say it takes them 50 seconds to run a lap. They could rest for 50 seconds and then repeat that 50-second effort over and over and over again for multiple reps. That's work capacity. It's your ability to repeat a task over and over and over again at a pretty high level. Think about football players. There's 70 offensive snaps in a football game. You want those football players to be able to repeat high efforts over 70 plays, right? Over the course of 70 plays. So it's 5 seconds of effort, 25 seconds break, 5 seconds of effort. You want to be able to stack that, repeat when you are training. For people that are deconditioned, their work capacity is going to be low. Talking track and field, they might be able to run that 400-meter lap under a minute. Then they rest for a minute. Then they try it again, and there's a 20-second drop-off. It's because their capacity to do work is low. We need to expand that. How do you expand work capacity? With the program we're going to talk about today, it's going to be carrying weights, doing different loaded carries, farmer's walks, suitcase carries, waiter's walks. We're going to be doing a bunch of different carries which require us to move weight over the course of 20 to 45 seconds, maybe a minute. And that now you're doing work for 40 seconds, we'll say, all right? 40 seconds of work is going to help expand and improve your work capacity. So we need to do two things before we start thinking about getting super strong and super jacked. We need to make sure we got the right mobility to get this stuff done, and then we need to make sure that we've got the work capacity to put the work in so that we can repeat high-level efforts over and over and over again. And then lastly here, as we get started, we have mobility, we have work capacity, and we have strength, okay? We want to think stability first. Stability is strength, being able to hold a position, whether it's your chin above the bar. That's being stable. It's whether or not you can stand on one leg, whether you could get into a split squat and do some stuff, right? That's stability. Stability is holding a set position and not being super wobbly and shaky, okay? We want to be stable first, and then on top of that mobility, on top of that stability, we could start adding strength to it. We could start loading up the bar a little bit. We're going to mess around with the tempo a little bit, like I said. Holding positions, isometric holds, chin above the bar, squeezing and holding is great. Push-up position plank, super, that's really good, all right? We're going to slow the tempo down. If you perform a push-up, come down slow. Push up fast, right? We're trying to build some stability. We're going to try to build some isometric strength. We're going to try to build some eccentric strength. And then we're going to be training those movement patterns over a slow period of time that when we do add some speed to it, we're going to be in a nice groove there, if you catch my drift. If you think about some sports, let's say baseball pitchers, I don't watch baseball, and I haven't watched baseball in a while, but I assume they still talk about this. Just that pitcher's arm is in the same groove for every throw that they make 100 times over and over again. Once they drop out of their little groove and their pattern gets a little bit messed up due to fatigue or something like that, that's when things could go haywire. So when we're bench pressing or if we're doing a squat, we want every squat to look the same. And if it doesn't look the same, then that means that there's some fatigue going on there or something else, maybe an injury, and we need to cut the set right then and there. So we want to stay in the groove. And the way that we could stay in the groove is by building some eccentric and isometric strength and also just being as stable as possible at these major muscle joints, right? So that is that, right? Now we do have a new person. So not only are we going to take when we start to go over this workout program here, remember here, it's going to be based off of 3 factors. There's going to be a mobility exercise, there's going to be a work capacity exercise, and then there's going to be a strength exercise, okay? Now I built this structure off of I don't know if it's out there. You might have to buy a book or something like that, but it's called the post-deployment program. Dan John did it, for some ex-soldiers. And what he was really trying to do here is to get people moving a little bit more mobile and to start reintroducing them to the weight room and get them back on a somewhat normal schedule. So what does he recommend for these people that he was coaching at the time? I'm going to steal a little bit of that, and that's where I got that mobility, work capacity, strength stuff from. All right, and in addition to that, trying to get our hormones back in check. So if you're somebody that is up, you're a night owl, you're doing this and that, your body's not going to be functioning optimally, right? So in addition to the strength stuff that I'm going to be going over here quick, I think in this first week, say you're working with a new client, I think an ideal situation is to talk to them about getting their body moving more. One thing that I spoke about before, and I'm going to speak about it again, walking. For a new person here, we could get them on a walk every morning. You know, if they are a night owl and they're having trouble doing this and that, we want to wake up around dawn and we want to go outside and go for a walk. 20, 30 minutes, okay? Come back in. Let's get in the habit of doing that. I think anybody could do that right now. So before we even start thinking about the weight room, we could focus on our sleep a little bit. We could go to bed earlier. We can make sure our room's dark. We can make sure our room's cool. One thing that's recommended, go to bed within 2 hours of when the sun goes down. So right now the sun's going down at 7:30, 8 o'clock here in Pennsylvania. Get to bed by 9:30, 10 o'clock. That's not a lot to ask for. That way you could wake up at dawn and you could go for your walk. You're going to reset your circadian rhythm. And with that, I think, you know, your hormones in theory are going to kind of rebalance themselves out, and your body's going to start working the way it should be, up at dawn, going to bed when the sun goes down, hopefully a deeper sleep. You know, you got a dark room, you got a nice cool room, and get rid of those devices at nighttime, right? I mean, I was just listening to Clarissa Shields, boxing champ, greatest woman boxer of all time, and she's talking about being on her devices late into the night, and I'm just thinking to myself, man, this girl's the greatest to ever be, and she doesn't even understand fully how to optimize her athletic ability. There's like this untapped genetic potential in that woman that she doesn't even realize yet. And I think she's only 26, and I think she's going to learn that stuff as she gets a little bit more progressing through her peak here in her career. But you know, she also talked about you know, working out, right? She talked about genetic potential. She never really bench pressed, was doing 135. She's like, yeah, in about a year I want to do 185. Like 3 months later, she was doing it. So, you know, we have a lot of potential in us. We just need to kind of get things in line here, and that's what this program's hoping to do. And the last component to this is going to be that you need some people in your life, right? So before we even start talking about what we're going to be doing in the gym, we need to take a look at our sleep, our daily activity levels, and then our relationships with people, all right? If we could get this stuff in check, I think we're going to be okay. Now, when we do get in that gym, you know, well, I guess there's always one more component too, and I don't want to, for the newcomer, right? I don't want to do this total overhaul of their nutrition, you know, and their diet and all this other stuff. What I would recommend, though, for a new person is try to cut your eating window down a little bit. If you get up at dawn, don't eat anything until after your walk, right? So now you're up, you go for a walk, say you get home at 7:30, then you could eat, right? And then at nighttime you have your dinner. Maybe you keep it in 12 hours past your first bite. That's when you cut your eating off, right? It might cut down on some late night calories, which it will help you sleep better as you're not digesting food as you're trying to shut the system down. You know what I'm saying? So let's cut down some late evening meals. So let's eat between a 10 and a 12-hour window. For a new person, let's just say it's 12 hours. So 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Eventually then, once we get used to that, we could start cutting this down, maybe 7:30 to 6:30, you know, something like that, where you just, now you're at an 11-hour window. I think the sweet spot is probably around 10 hours for most people. So sorry, there's a few things that I forgot about, that time-restricted eating part of it all. So before we even step foot in the gym with a new person, we could get them walking, and while you're walking, let's say you are working with them, walk and talk, man. People open up when they're out there exercising. They feel good, they get some endorphins going, nice spring day out there. Go for a walk, start talking to them. Get better sleep. Go for walks, like I said, and then the time-restricted eating, right? And then lastly, we need to have some people in our lives, right? So now we're getting into the nuts and bolts here. So we got that, we went over mobility, work capacity, stability. We went over the things that people should be doing outside of the gym. You know, I don't want to say that strength training is overrated, because I think, well, all those other factors are probably more important, I think. Getting adequate sleep, eating right, and having personal relationships, I think are going to impact just your overall well-being a little bit more than what you do in the weight room. That being said, what we do in the weight room is one of those habits. It's one of those keystone habits that, you know, you start talking to somebody and they're like, man, I started working out. I'm starting to eat a little bit better. I'm not getting that Frappuccino anymore. I'm only getting 1 latte a day. I'm not going to McDonald's before I come to the gym. I'm not smoking cigarettes anymore. You know, things like that. It's like the power of habit. It was identified keystone habits. Great book, Power of Habit, check it out. But what it is that those keystone habits are that first thing that you do that start to have this big ripple effect on everything else you do. That snowball effect. It's like once you get the ball rolling, man, that thing just starts to expand into other areas of your life, and you start, maybe you start to realize some of these untapped things that you could do in your life that could kind of make you a better person, right? So a lot of factors going on here, right, with the new client. Get them moving, get them sleeping better, be there for them, be a person in their life. And then we're talking strength training now. So I think the optimal plan, if the goal is to put on absolute strength, there's this great system, great program, the Juggernaut program. I just had some dudes that I used to coach on it. I've done in the past. I've reached levels that I've never reached before. All right? So if that's going to be our point B, when I talk to this man, when I talk to this 30-year-old man, and he said, this is what I want. This is what I want for my boy. This is what I want him doing. I had to pump the brakes a little bit, and I said, hey, man, let's make sure he's right first. So let's take a look at some of these things. So now we know what our point B is, the Juggernaut program. The Juggernaut program is 12 weeks. You do 3 weeks of basically sets of 10 with different weights. You do 3 weeks of sets of 8. You do 3 weeks of sets of 5, and you do 3 weeks of sets of 3. This Juggernaut program will be a podcast episode down the line here. But right now, if it's something that you're interested in, how to get stronger flat out in a quick, simple, easy way, buy the Juggernaut program. All right, it's just a quick and easy book, and it's great. He lays out the whole plan for you. If you don't want to buy it, you're just going to have to wait for me. So that being said, it's based around the 4 lifts, right? We have the overhead press, the military press, the bench press, the deadlift, the squat. You have a guy that hasn't worked out in a while, or a gal, and as a trainer, you're like, man, I want to get this person to this point. How do I do it? Here was my advice. We're going to do a few exercises. To get ourselves ready for the overhead press, we're going to do 2 things. We're going to do a half kneeling press, which is 1 knee on the ground, and you're going to use, and if your right knee's down, you press with your right arm. This allows your shoulder to kind of rotate in a nice, smooth, and efficient pattern. Finish with the bicep near the ear. Do your reps on the right side, then do your reps on the left side. That's exercise 1 that's going to get us ready for that. Exercise 2, hanging from a pull-up bar, man. I've been talking about how great this is, but really, the hang has 4 components to it. We're hanging, a lot of these muscles around this armpit area and this shoulder region here, they get stretched out to the point where once you come down from that, you're like, oh man, that feels kind of good. Your shoulders feel a little bit more loose, right? That's number 1. Number 2, grip. We're hanging, we're holding our body weight. Our hands, our forearms, they're probably going to get pretty swole up as we're holding ourselves up there. So we're going to improve grip strength. A stronger hand would be, in theory, stronger forearm. A stronger forearm is going to equal a stronger upper arm. As it kind of works its way up the chain, we're going to start developing and start building pull-ups off of this stuff, right? After that, the Goblet Squat. This is the king of kind of teaching the squat, in my opinion. You cradle the weight here, you bend your knees and you get your elbows right down to your knees, and then you stand up. Elbows got to touch, boys and girls. If you're not touching, it's not a full range of motion. The Goblet Squat will teach you mobility. For the deadlift, how we're going to prepare for the deadlift? Rack deadlifts, all right? You get yourself a squat rack. You put the bar on the pins that are going pretty much perpendicular to how you would have the bar, all right? And you start with the bar 1 inch above your knees, all right? It's kind of like an RDL, but the bar's only going to go above your knees, and you touch the bar down to the rack every time. So as you get up nice and tall, you hinge your hips back. Once that bar touches the pins, the rack, the safety bars, whatever you want to call it, then you stand up. The range of motion is small, all right, but all we're doing here is working on sitting our hips back, really trying to load up our glutes, and as we stand up in our hamstrings, right, as we stand up, we squeeze those muscles there, and we're really trying to develop some hip hinging ability here, while also holding a load. Because down the road here, once we get to that Juggernaut plan, we're going to have to be able to be in a good position to do so, right? And then lastly, how are we going to get ready for the bench press? I think we're going to just work on some body weight stuff, man. We're going to be working on the push-up. And with the push-up here, like I mentioned before, stability first, right? We're going to be messing with some different tempos. If you could do 5 perfect push-ups, great. Now we're going to see if you could take 5 seconds to lower, pause for 1 count at the bottom, and then press up. Can you do 5 reps of that? If you can, great. Now we're going to start doing 5 seconds to lower, maybe a 5-second pause at the bottom, and then come up. We're really trying to build some eccentric and isometric strength here with this stuff, right? So the way that we're going to develop and build ourselves up for this Juggernaut program, We're going to be doing the half kneeling press. We're going to be doing hanging from the bar. And if you can do, say, 5 or more pull-ups, your practice is going to be this. Hang for 30 seconds, pull yourself up, come down. Congratulations, you just did 1 of those. The goal is going to be to work up to 4. To get ourselves ready for the squat, we're doing goblet squats. To get ourselves ready for the for the hex bar deadlift or the straight bar deadlift. I just use hex bars. I don't use straight bars. We're doing the rack pull. All right, it's the rack deadlift. To get ourselves ready for the bench press, we're going to be doing tempo style push-ups, all right? How do we put all this in a plan now? So remember now, we're coming all the way back to what we talked about earlier. 3 days a week, let's say. You're going to say, well, there's four big power lifts. It doesn't matter. Basically, how we're going to lift is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then Monday. All right, we're adults here. We're not training for a competition. And then I pick up again on that following Wednesday. So you're going to be doing a heavy, say, deadlift 1 week. You're still going to do deadlift type moves, on Monday. You're still going to do deadlift. You're still going to hinge at your hips on Wednesday and Friday, and then the following Monday. But you're not going to deadlift again heavy until that next Wednesday, if you catch my drift, all right? So we're spreading out a 4-day plan. So getting back to what we're going to be doing now. The mobility exercise, so let's say we're going to be doing our half kneeling press. We're going to be getting in this yoga cobra position, and all we're going to do is we're going to take our eyes up and bend our neck back, and then we're going to take our neck down towards the ground here. So like I said, everything is kind of connected, right? So if I'm going to be able to press over weight, I'm going to have to release some tension, maybe in my neck, maybe in the scapula, maybe around that thoracic region. So that's what we're going to try to unlock here. So basically what we're doing here, this is Tim Anderson stuff, original strength, all right? Basically, you're going to be in that cobra position doing nods, up and down. After you do the nods, you're going to be doing a waiter's walk. 1 weight overhead, walk down, walk back, switch hands, walk down, walk back. After you do that, you're going to be moving to your half kneeling presses. Now we're going to move to the hangs, right? The hangs, and then if we can, a pull-up. So what do? We stay in that same position now. We're in that cobra position from yoga, and then all I'm going to do is I'm going to look to my right, and I'm going to try to find my shoelaces. Then I'm going to look to my left and try to find my shoelaces. I'm working some area. I'm working the neck still, but also I'm starting to work around that thoracic region, which is like the chest region, but just on the back side of the body, right? So I'm getting a little bit of rotation there. And I'm also already in extension because of that cobra position I'm in. I'm doing the find your laces. Then I'm going to be doing a suitcase carry, which is good posture. Weights in one hand. Walk down and back. Imagine you got a book on your head, right? Imagine you're balancing with a book on your head. Walk with good posture down, right hand down and back, then left hand down and back. After that, you hang from the bar. Moving on. Getting prepared for the goblet squat. I'm getting in the 6-point position, which is basically toes, knees, hands on the ground. I'm going to push my hips back. I'm going to get a stretch on the inside of my groin. Some people call this some sort of like frog stretch. You know, it is a yoga move too, but as I sit with my butt back on my heels, all I'm going to do is just work through that stuff again, the neck stuff. So I'm nodding up, I'm looking down, and then I'm looking up, all right? So the 6-point nod. Then we're going to be going to farmer's walks. That's a weight in each hand. With good posture, walk down and back, all right? And then you move on to your goblet squats. As we get prepared for the rack deadlift here, I'm in that 6-point position again. This time, I'm going to rock my butt back towards my heels, and then my hands will be here, and then I'm going to rock myself forward and bring my shoulders over top of my hands. Again, just look up the 6-point rock. That's out there. Then I'm going to stretch my hip flexors. So now we're going to be done with the work capacity stuff. We're going to focus on a little bit more the mobility stuff. I'm going to stretch my hip flexors, then I'm going to go perform my rack deadlifts. Lastly, to get prepared for the push-up, we're going to be doing some thoracic rotations, basically. Hands and knees. This hand is going to be back behind the ear. I'm going to take my one elbow down across the body towards the other elbow. Then I'm just going to try to twist and open up. Remember, the movement's around the chest area, all right? The chest area of the back, not the low back, not the lumbar area, all right? Thoracic rotation. Then I'm going to stretch my hamstrings a bit. Then I'm going to do my push-up work, all right? At the end of all this now, I got 3 work capacity exercises in. I got the waiter's walk, the suitcase carry, and I got the farmer's walk. All right, I've worked my mobility pretty much from my neck down to the thoracic spine, down to the hip flexors, hitting the hamstrings, and after that, we go home. All right, so we have here, the mobility, the work capacity, some flexibility, and some strength stuff, right? So we do this, right? And now you're going to start asking yourself, what do we do for reps? Well, this is the simplicity of it all. Josh Hillis, I think he wrote Fat Loss Happens on Monday with Dan John, but basically what he recommended is varying your reps here. If we're trying to get, a newcomer acclimated to the gym, week 1, we do 1 set, week 2, 2 sets, week 3, 3 sets, week 4, 4 sets, all right? So week 1, we're going to do 1 set of 25 reps, all right? Week 2, 2 sets of 12 reps. Week 3, 3 sets of 8. Week 4, 4 sets of 5. This all fits into that 20 to 25 rep. I think Prilipin had this chart back in the day. DeLorme, Watkins, some names from the 50s, 60s. A lot of their research kind of had that 25 rep range as a sweet spot, and we're just getting there in a variety of different ways. 1 set of 25, 2 sets of 12, 3 sets of 8, 5 sets of 4 sets of 5, 5 sets of 5 even, whatever you want to do here. But try to stick to about 25 hard-ish reps, okay? At this point now, you're at week 4, so now we have a choice to make. I either repeat all this again and repeat the same program, or now, instead of doing, the half kneeling press, now I start to incorporate the program from Juggernaut. So let's say that I do the Juggernaut stuff. Let's say I like how my body's feeling. As I'm getting ready for the military press, so instead of doing half kneeling presses, I'm doing standing barbell overhead press. I'm going to do the prone neck stretch, the mobility move. Then I'm going to do the waiter's walk, and then I'm going to do my military presses, right? Boom, perfect. I'm just substituting out the different strength exercises for the Juggernaut program now. On the Goblet Squat day, I'm doing whatever squat I want to do. For me, it was always front squats. I never did back squats. So what would I do on that day? 6-point neck, farmer's walks, front squats. On the deadlift day now, 6-point rock, stretch the hip flexors, do my hex bar deadlift. On the bench press day, thoracic rotation from that 4 points, stretch the hamstrings, do some bench presses, right? And then always, pull-ups would always be in the program. I'm in that prone cobra position. I'm trying to find my laces. I'm looking side to side. I'm doing a suitcase carry. I'm pulling myself up, all right? I still recommend if you're a guy that could do, 5 or more, don't kill yourself with the reps, especially if you've been inactive and detrained. Somebody mentioned, they call it MAPS, middle-age pull-up syndrome, that tendonitis that a lot of people end up getting around the elbow joint. I would recommend hanging first. Hang for 30. Do 1 pull-up. That's your goal. If you could do that, then try to hang for 30. That's 1 week, say. Maybe spend 2 weeks doing that, actually. Spend 2 weeks doing that. Then the next 2 weeks, hang for 30. Do a pull-up. Hang for 30 for 2 weeks. And you see how I'm progressing this. Then weeks 5 and 6, hang for 30. 1. Do 1 pull-up. Hang for 30. Do another pull-up. And you just try to keep adding. And at the end of the 12 weeks, hopefully we could get to 4 of those, right? As we break down the Juggernaut, like I said, 12 weeks. 3 sets, 3 weeks of doing some high volume stuff here, all right? Sets of 10 roughly, and then we're going to be doing some sets of 8, and then some sets of 5s, and some sets of 3s. The power of this program here is that after every 3-week period here, so let's say we're doing our sets of 10. Again, buy the book, look it up. But basically how it lays out for us, you do 5 sets of 10 at 60% of your max, all right? So you got to figure out where your max is. For these newcomers here, 2 or 3 rep max, use that number for Juggernaut, right? Don't do a true 1 rep max. You want to be working at about 90% of whatever your real max may be. So basically, if you get 200 pounds for 2, use 200 pounds as your max for the bench press, say. All right, you with me on that? So whatever your 2 rep max is, use that as your max. 2 or 3 rep max, we'll say. All right, from there, you figure out what your max is. So you're going to work 5 sets of 10 at 60%. Then the next time you do your, let's say, military presses, sorry, we're using bench press, for example. 200 pounds as your bench, right? You do 60% of that. 5 sets of 10. 120 pounds, 5 sets of 10. The next time you go, you got to go 67.5%. And then you got to do 3 sets of 10. I don't know what that is off the top of my head. Let's just say 135-ish. After that, you do 75% of 200 pounds. That's 150 pounds. And you do as many reps as possible. The goal is going to be to exceed 10. If you exceed 10, you're going to adjust your max for your next 3 weeks of lifting, right? So for the upper body lifts, if you do 12 reps, say, on the bench press, you do 200 pounds for 12. That's 2 extra reps. That's 2 over 10. So you multiply that by 2.5 pounds, which equals 5. So what you're going to do then for that next set of 3 weeks, when you're doing reps of 8, Your max that you're working off now is 205. So every 3 weeks, depending on what you do on that last set, your working max for the next phase is going to be increased. And for new people, I think this is a very powerful tool, because in the beginning, you're not going to have that work capacity or really the strength levels yet. So you're going to be seeing these great improvements week after week after week. And not only did I see these great improvements with people that have been training for years, you know, you're going to see it you're going to see it blow up with some of these people. I've had kids that I used to coach, college level football players. At the end of this program, they went from, 4 chin-ups to 11 chin-ups. They put on 45 plus pounds on most of their lifts that they were doing. It's pretty incredible. Stuff they did in the beginning, say they did, 275 for 4 on a squat, they did 15 of that at the end of the program. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty powerful. But don't rush to point B. Don't forget that we need to create that foundation, and we need to have the mobility, the work capacity, and some entry-level strength before we start cranking it up. So I had a lot going on here, man. I think I was a little bit all over the place, all right? I hope you guys got this. Ask some questions if you have it, right? But what it comes down to, somebody that is not training at all, talk about their daily movements, right? Get them moving more, get them sleeping better, get them eating in a time window, and get them, talking to people, doing more stuff, having people in their lives. That is the number one stuff right there. Those 4 items, let's get that in check. And then from there, we could start adding some strength training in. The basic lifts, guys, the half kneeling press, hanging from a pull-up bar, the goblet squat, the rack deadlift, the push-up. Those foundation pieces, let's work on that for 4 weeks. Let's add in those mobility and work capacity stuff and the different flexibility stuff with that, all right? Let's improve upon this all. From there, then we could get to the big stuff, the meat and potatoes, that juggernaut program, that 12-week program that we're just going to try to get in there and try to get as strong as possible. All right? And this is not to turn you into some huge power lifter. It's just to kind of tap into some of that potential that you have as a human being to reach some high levels with strength stuff. All right? So if you have some questions, you know where to find me, man. chrisflook.net's the website. I got a great newsletter that I pump out every Sunday morning called The Weekly Word. If you want to get in on that, it kind of talks about a lot of the stuff I discuss in the podcast and all the other randomness that I do with training, what I've been watching, what I've been thinking about, things like that. That's every Sunday at 7:30 a.m. Go to chrisflook.net, subscribe. Enter your email and then click subscribe. YouTube, all right, if you're watching this, you're already on my YouTube page. Like it, subscribe it. I'm on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, Stitcher. I mean, this thing is out there. Tell your friends about it. I like the way things are going as of late. If you have some questions, if you want me to cover a certain book, if you want me to cover a certain topic, let me know. I'll be glad to research it. If not, spring is finally here in the wonderful state of Pennsylvania. The farm is looking pretty. Pretty soon we'll be covered in sticker bushes. But anyhow, hope you guys have a great day, man. Peace, everybody.